Hello friends, welcome to CEC Live Lectures. Dear friends, as you know that we have started a new series on cloud computing. In our previous session, we tried to understand about what cloud computing is, as well as we discussed the various properties of the cloud computing. Dear friends, today in this session, we are going to talk on cloud services and deployment models. And for the discussion on the topic, we have with us in our studios Dr. Kashish Ara Shakil. Dr. Kashish Ara Shakil is Assistant Professor in Department of Computer Science and Engineering, Jamia Hamdard. Dr. Shakil Ara is she is very prolific professor, and we believe that you are going to get maximum knowledge through her. So let's welcome our guest, Dr. Shakil, and I would request her to give us an in-depth knowledge on today's topic. Hello, ma'am. Welcome to the lecture.
Hello, dear listeners. Today we are going to talk about the different cloud service and deployment models. This is the second lecture in the series of cloud computing, and as your host has already introduced me, I'm Dr. Kashish Ara Shakil, working as an assistant professor at the Department of Computer Science and Engineering, Jamia Hamdard. In the previous lecture, we had covered up what cloud computing is all about. We had discussed that cloud is nothing but a technology by which you can access all the services depending upon your requirement, your needs, as a service. And how do you pay for this technology? You just need to pay for the amount that you are going to use. Then we discussed upon the different properties and characteristics prevalent in cloud environment. So now we'll take up from here, and this is the second lecture. So we'll first begin with the different benefits which we can draw from cloud, and then we'll move forward and study about the different service and deployment models. So let's see what we can gain from cloud computing, whether is it a lucrative approach or whether you should adopt it or not. Let's see. So what are the different benefits from cloud computing? Cloud computing brings with it many benefits, and these benefits can be from the two perspectives. One, from the market and enterprise view, and another benefit can be seen from the end user and individual view. So for the market and enterprise, the benefits can be reduced initial investment, because if you are going to start a new business, there is always an initial investment which is involved. What can these initial investments be? It can be like buying the property where you are going to start your business, the inventory which is required, the different resources which are required, and of course human beings, human resources are also involved. Another kind of resource which is required is it can be the different inventories, softwares, and platforms if you're going for an IT business. But if you go for cloud, then it can lead to reduced individual investments. Then it can also reduce the amount of capital expenditure which is involved. You do not have to invest a huge amount in the initial capital expenditure. You just need to buy the cloud services. How these services you can buy depending upon your requirement. If you have a requirement for a particular kind of software, you can just log into a particular service provider. For example, Amazon, Google, all these are different service providers. We had already discussed about the different service provider in the previous lecture. So you can just log on to the services of these service provider and just use these services. So there is no need for any initial capital expenditure except for the services which you are using. Then another is it improves the industrial specialization. How does it improve the industrial specialization? Because the software engineers or the resource persons, they are no longer engaged in maintaining things like software, inventory, any hardware. They are not involved in these things. These software engineers, they can just focus on the business, whatever their specialty is, rather than focusing on the back end, on the parts like software, hardware, etc. You just need to log into the service provider's portal and use these services. So no initial expenditure is involved. Then it will lead to improved resource utilization. So since you are going to use, sometimes you will just use the service providers services, and another way of using cloud is set up your own private cloud. So in that case, you will be using your own resources. These resources can be your commodity hardware, any resource which is available at your disposal in your enterprise. You can just use those resources. There is no need to buy any new hardware, new resources. Just use these. And how you will set up a private cloud and what a private cloud is, we will discuss soon. Then another benefit of cloud computing is from the end user perspective. From the end user perspective, who are the end users for cloud? These are basically the users who will be using cloud services. It can be me, it can be you, it can be any business organization. So these are the users of cloud computing. What they will be doing is, if they go for cloud, it will lead to reduced local computing power. So what does local computing power means is that you no longer have to install any of the computing resources at your end. So you can only go for the resources which are being provided by the cloud service providers and use their resources. So it will reduce the local computing power. You're not locally required to have any kind of computing power. You can use computing of any remote host or any remote service provider. Then it will reduce the local storage power. So if you are going to opt for services which are being provided by a third party service provider, then there is no requirement for you to store your data in your hard disk, in your computer. It is no longer a requirement. So you don't have to worry about that my system might run out of memory after storage of a certain volume of data. What you just need to do is just keep using the cloud services and keep uploading your data to the cloud service provider without worrying about the storage requirements. So it will lead to reduced local storage power. Then another benefit from cloud computing is it provides a variety of thin client devices in daily life. So what does a thin client device mean? A thin client device is one which doesn't have very high computing power. It is thin. You don't need to store any kind of softwares at the client level. So you just need a very thin system without any kind of special software, any kind of special hardware. You need a thin system with which you can just log in and use the cloud services. So now your mobile phone can also become a very, very powerful computing device. It is the thin client. Here, your mobile device can be considered synonymous to any kind of thin computing gadget with which you can log on to the cloud service and then access a world of innumerable and unexplored resources, unexplored computing, anything, everything, whatever you need depending upon your requirement. You can just log on with a device as thin as your mobile phone. So for market and enterprises, of course, it reduces a lot of burden because the enterprise, the market people, they are always overburdened with lots of work. So it will lead to reduced initial investments like we had already discussed. So for in case of traditional processes, when we had opted for traditional processes for enterprises to initiate their business, how the traditional business went upon. First of all, the service providers, all the traditional business enterprises, they had to perform some kind of survey and analysis of the industry and the market, that what are the things which are prevalent in the market at this point of view. All the initial survey had to be done by the business people. Then they had to estimate upon the quantity of the supply and demand, whether how much inventory I will be requiring, how much resources I will be requiring, and how much software I will be requiring to meet up to my business demands. So this was required in case of a traditional system. Then you had to purchase and deploy IT infrastructures also. What these IT infrastructure can comprise of, they can comprise of high-end servers, they can comprise of desktops, they can comprise of laptops, all the computing needs. then the initial businesses, they had to install and test the software system also. So because since they will be having their own in-house inventory, their own in-house software, so they had to initially install and test the software system on their own. Then they had to design and develop enterprise-specific business service. So if a particular business organization has a requirement for a particular kind of software, then they had to develop and design their requirements on the basis of their specific needs. Then apart from this, they had to announce the business services to the clients that, okay, such and such business services are going to be provided by me. So these were the announcements which the business providers, they had to make, that my company is going to provide these services. And of course those would be limited because you have as a business person, they had an expertise in a particular kind of software, they had a certain kind of restriction that only these kind of services will be provided by them. So what are the drawbacks of this approach? Some of the drawbacks of this approach is that the service analysis and estimation may not be 100% correct. So sometimes it might happen that I might be needing say 5,000 PCs for my business, and I had conducted a survey which showed that I require only 500, and what if I need more? Then these inaccurate survey and analysis can lead to huge business loss. Then infrastructure deployment is very time consuming. So if I need to upgrade my system, after knowing that my business, it requires 5,000 and not 500 PCs, I would have to develop and deploy my new infrastructure. So developing and deployment of a new infrastructure would be very, very time consuming. You wouldn't be needing space to store it. You would be needing resource persons to make the entire setup. And of course, you will be needing other things apart from it, like electricity will be involved, and of course, air conditioning, which is a part of IT infrastructure nowadays. All these things, all these resources will be required. And in case the investments, the resources, they were not up to the mark, and the business people, they decide, okay, no, I want to switch to another kind of business. Maybe in IT domain only, they want to switch to another kind of business. For that, are the enterprise business, are they ready to take this risk because they don't have their infrastructure? And whatever infrastructure they had built up for a particular kind of application. So it is not always easy to switch from one domain to another. So it will lead to high risks, and of course it can lead to failures of the entire business organization, and the entire organization can come down in this kind of case. But what if we are going for a cloud-based approach for initiating our business requirement? So in case of going for a cloud approach, then also survey and analysis is involved about the industry and the market. But now the survey and analysis which will comprise of the kind of service provider I must go for. Whether I go for this X kind of service provider, or I should go with the Y kind of service provider. So what kind of service provider do I need? This kind of survey has to be done. Then another one is design and develop business service upon the cloud environment. So instead of developing your own infrastructure, instead of developing your own resources for a particular business process, you have to now design and deploy your business depending upon the things which the service provider are providing, which is not a tough job, because you can choose the kind of service you need depending upon your requirements. So it's very easy. You just choose a platform and then you go about by deploying your own services. Then you need to announce the business services to the client. This part will be there even if you're going for cloud services. But what is the benefit if you're going for cloud? Enterprise, they do not need to develop their own infrastructure. So if you're not developing your own infrastructure, then what can be the benefits? You will save on important resources, like you will be saving on the electricity. You will be saving on the office space. You will be saving on the human resources which are involved. and lots more. So at the end, you'll be saving in a lot of money and a lot of power. Then you can develop and deploy business services in very short time, because there is no need to buy any new infrastructure altogether. What you need to do is just plug into the cloud services and go about it. There you are, and you can just take up from there and start running your own business. So no need for any infrastructure and no need for deploying any kind of new services. Then the next benefit is it can reduce the business loss of wrong investments. So if you think after deploying a particular kind of service and after going for a particular kind of business, I realize that this business is not providing me with any kind of benefit. So what I can do if I have opted for cloud services is I can just go and just change my business domain altogether. And for that, what I need to do is I just need to change the kind of services I'm using and perhaps hire more people for those specialized services. And there you are good to go, and you can just move on to the next kind of business. So it reduces the business risks which are involved due to failure. Then what are the achievements of cloud over the traditional computing? Let's see. In terms of investment risks, for traditional system, who are the risk holders? The stakeholders in case of traditional systems are the enterprise themselves. But with the cloud computing, the risk holders are the people who are the third party. So what is the third party in cloud? It is the cloud service providers. So the entire risk is now with the cloud service provider. You don't have to worry about the risk at all. The only risk which is involved at this point of time for you is that maybe your initial time has gotten wasted. Apart from that, no other risk relating to business such as infrastructure or any kind of office space or any kind of software you have purchased, there is no risk. Then another kind of achievement of cloud computing over the traditional one is in terms of the infrastructure which is involved. In case of traditional systems, the infrastructure was owned by the enterprise themselves. But if you're going for cloud services, you are going to use the infrastructure which is being provided to you by the cloud service providers. So in case of a software company, so what are the kind of infrastructures they can need? They can need computing power, they can need servers, they can need memory, they can need RAM, they can need CPU. So these are the computing powers, these are the infrastructures which are involved, and they can be easily leveraged by these users by going for cloud services. Then another kind of achievement of cloud computing over the traditional one is the time duration. So if you are going for a traditional approach, then the time duration will be very long. The time duration for deployment of your system will be very long, because you will be needing a lot of time for just holding up the initial capital investment, for developing the infrastructure, for hiring the human resources, then for setting up the entire software, the entire office space. So all this will involve a very long time duration. But what if you are going for a cloud service? In this case, the only time is the time involved in accessing these services, which can be, I think, less than a day or just a few minutes, depending upon your requirements. So you can just go off and start your business on the fly very fast if you're opting for a cloud approach. Okay. Then we talked about the reduced capital investment. So how the reduced capital investment was done how the capital investment was being done in case of traditional approaches. In case of traditional approach, each of the enterprise, they should establish its own IT department. Then the IT department should handle the different jobs such as manage and administration of the hardware and software. Then they had to do all the maintenance work like backups, monitoring, etc. Then they had to purchase new infrastructure and eliminate the outdated ones. Then they had to also cater for any kind of unexpected failure which could occur. So if there is, say, suddenly a natural calamity like there is an earthquake, your entire business will go down. Maybe if you are holding the entire data in one place in the organization, then you are just ruined. But if you go for cloud, there are different data centers across different geographical locations which safeguard you from all the natural calamities and any unexpected mishappening which can occur. So the drawbacks of the traditional approach can be you have to pay on your own for the IT infrastructure which you require, which is not always feasible. And even for a startup organization, if you are a startup organization, then you might not be having that much of capital investment, and then you have to take care of the risks which are involved from the point of view of the IT hardware, software, and any kind of failure. So all the risk, everything will be your own. Then if you have to replace and you have to upgrade your system, then it will also be a very time consuming and of course monetarily expensive activity, because you have to upgrade your entire system, you have to buy new infrastructure and maybe purchase a new software, and then maybe you have to train the people for the usage of these software. So it is a very time consuming and a very expensive activity. But if you are going for a traditional approach like cloud computing, you can just eliminate your IT department altogether. There's no need for hiring like 100 people for doing a job. You can just hire, say, a few 5 or 10 people to do a particular job, because all they need is they just need to log into cloud services and use the kind of service they require. So you don't need any extra human resource for maintenance, for hardware maintenance, for software maintenance, for upgrading the patches, for upgrading the software. So I think 5 to 10 people can easily do the work which was earlier being done by, say, 100 or thousands of people. So it can ultimately dismiss the IT department altogether. Then the jobs of IT departments can be done by the service providers themselves, because they can dynamically update and upgrade the hardware and software. So if I'm using a hardware provided by any cloud service provider, so I do not have to worry about any kind of upgradation, any kind of purchase of new hardware and software. All these things will be done by the people at the service provider end. So for me as a business person, I do not have to care about any kind of upgradation. I just have to focus on my specialization, on my activity and my business. Then you can dynamically provision and deploy new infrastructures depending upon your need. So if you need more kind of resources, you can just ask your cloud service provider to provision you with more resources, and you don't have to do anything manually. You don't have to manually provision new resources for your IT requirement or for your infrastructure. So if you need more CPUs, you can just keep on using the service provider, and perhaps maybe during the service level agreement itself, you can pre-demand them that these many services I will be needing, these many resources I will be needing, these many CPUs I will be needing. So as and when my requirement is increasing, you don't ask me to increase, you just do it on your own. And how can this be achieved? That will be through the scalability and elasticity property of cloud computing, which we had discussed in the previous lecture. Then you can automatically perform any backup of data and check consistencies. This all will be done by the service provider themselves, and you do not have to worry about any kind of natural disasters, any kind of natural calamity, or any kind of system malfunction, because you are using the services which are provided by the service provider. So it's not your headache if you have a flood or any other kind of natural calamity like an earthquake. You don't have to worry about that. Everything is taken care of by the service provider. And of course, for the service providers also, they have different data centers located across different geographical locations in the world. So even if their data center is under some kind of threat, then they can easily back up the data from any other data center where they have hosted your data. So you don't have to worry about any kind of threats or malfunctioning. So what are the benefits of the cloud approach? So enterprises can now shift their effort to its business focus because they don't have to worry about other minute details of hardware, software upgradation, etc. They can just easily shift their efforts to their business, and enterprises can reconfigure its services in a very short span of time because they no longer have to be dependent upon a particular resource or a particular person to come and upgrade and reconfigure their services. What they need to do is they just need to click onto the service provider's portal and ask them that I need these services to be reconfigured or I need these services to be upgraded, and everything will be taken care of by the service provider itself. So you're offloading everything to the service provider, all your headaches, all your risk, everything. So, and the enterprise pays to the cloud service provider on the basis of the services which are being used. So if you are wanting a particular new software, so that is also taken care of by the service provider. So you don't have to worry about how to procure a particular software, how to upgrade a particular patch. Everything is taken care of by the service provider itself. Then let's see what are the achievements which cloud computing achieves over traditional computing in terms of capital investment. In terms of capital investments, if you are going to see from the business focus, from that point of view, there is no need for traditional systems to own a new IT department itself. What their IT department will now be, it will only be the cloud providers and services which are being used, and for the payment they do not have to worry about any kind of huge infrastructure, any kind of huge infrastructure cost which is involved. They'll just pay for the services which are being involved, and the time duration will be fast for procuring these services. So we'll continue with these benefits in the second half of the lecture, and we'll just stop here for a short break.
With this note, thank you, ma'am. Thank you so very much for giving us this productive session. And friends, we believe that you might have learnt a lot through this session. So you are requested to be with us as we are back after a short break. Thank you. Hello friends, welcome back to this session. Friends, as you know that today we are talking on cloud service and deployment models, and for the discussion on the topic we have with us in our studio Dr. Kashish Ara Shakil. Dr. Kashish Ara Shakil is Assistant Professor in Department of Computer Science and Engineering, Jamia Hamdard, and we believe that you might have discovered through her lots of information through our previous session, and in this session to you, as we promised, we are here with her to give you maximum of the knowledge as well as information. So let's welcome our guest, Dr. Kashish Ara Shakil, once again. Hello ma'am, welcome to the lecture.
Yeah. So we were just discussing about the different benefits of cloud computing. So let's continue with it. And the next benefit of cloud computing is it provides reduced industrial burden. So if you're going for a traditional approach, then what kind of burden it has on the industry and market? Let's see. First is that every enterprise has to set up its own IT department. So if you're going for a traditional approach, you have to set up your own IT department. Then you have to hire resource people to handle such kind of IT departments, and you have to manage all the complexities involved in an enterprise yourself. So all the infrastructure, everything had to be taken care of by the industry providers themselves. And what are the drawbacks of these systems? The IT department in this case were not able to focus on their main business. They were just engaged in focusing on other things like setting up the hardware, software, etc. And they just ran out of thinking about their own business requirement. Then another kind of drawback is that many of the enterprises, they are not very well equipped with the things happening in the IT infrastructure, in the IT domain, and they can easily go on to and get into loss in case of, they can get into failures, and they're not able to come out of it, and then they have to hire some specialized people from certain departments to come and handle these kind of IT failures. So these were the drawbacks in case of traditional systems. So let's see how does cloud computing reduce this kind of burden for the IT industry. In case, or if you're going for cloud approach, the cloud providers, they centrally maintain the IT infrastructure for its client. So as a client, you do not have to, as a business person, you do not have to maintain the infrastructure on your own. It will be maintained by the service providers themselves. Then the cloud service provider, they will be having their own departments, their own experts for management and administration, because their business is not focused on certain specialized thing. Their business is focused on providing hardware and software services. So they have their own separate departments for these kind of services. So these things will be taken care of by the service providers themselves. Then the cloud providers, they will focus on providing reliable IT services, because for cloud computing, since it's a business for the service providers, they will ensure that whatever their services they are providing, they are reliable. And what the enterprises, they need to do is they just need to go and rent out for these services. They do not have to worry about the security point of view, or how the upgradation is provided, how a particular management of a particular infrastructure is taken care of. They do not have to do anything if you are going for a cloud approach. So it will reduce the burden on the industry, and they can focus on their main work. So it will promote specialized development of skills, and it will increase and enhance the performance, and it will provide these services in a more optimized, in a more enhanced manner. And it will lead to wastage of resources, because if you're going for cloud, you're going to use the resources which are being provided to the cloud to you by the cloud service providers. So you're going to only rent out the kind of services you are needing at a particular point of time. You will not have more resources than you need. So it will lead to less resource usage and thus promote sustainability as a whole. Let's see what are the burdens which cloud computing approach achieves over the traditional ones in terms of industrial burden. From the collaboration point of view, every enterprise, it needs to take care of everything. If you're going for a traditional approach, the enterprise will take care of everything. But if you're going for a cloud-based approach, the cloud service provider will take care of everything, all the collaboration, everything is taken care of by the cloud service provider. In terms of manageability, it will reduce the management burden for the industry providers because they do not have to manage the infrastructure on their own. Everything will be taken care of by the cloud service provider in case you're going for cloud services. But if you're going for traditional approaches, then you have to take care of all the management responsibilities. Then in case of relationships, there is a standalone relationship if you're going for a traditional approach, because you are the only person who is involved, so you have to take care of all the risk, everything. But if you are going for a cloud based approach, then it is a win-win situation for you as the business person as well as for the service provider. For you as a business person, because you have reduced capital investment, you have reduced industrial burden, everything is taken care of by the service provider, all the risk, everything is offloaded to the service provider. And the service provider, they are of course getting benefited because they are getting to run their business. Then another benefit is optimal resource utilization. In case of traditional industry and market, what was the traditional approach was the enterprises, they seldom take care about their IT resource utilization because they were not worried about any kind of resource utilization. Like they were not worried that if I will use 50 PC at one point of time, I will pay more, because everything was their own in-house thing. But now if they're going for cloud-based services, then they have to pay for every penny, pay a penny for every kind of resource they are using. So this led to improved resource utilization. And in traditional approaches, the IT resources, they usually over invested for a peak demand. So if they before conducting a survey, what they used to do is they used to see, okay, this can be my peak demand and I need to procure at least this much amount of resources for my system. So they were always being over provisioned. The resources were being over provisioned because those peak demands were very seldomly met, and a system hitting its peak resource would be a very rare consequence, a very rare incident. So the drawback for this system was a lot of power was getting wasted. There was also over provisioning of a lot of resources. But if you work in collaboration with the cloud providers, how the resources are being managed, they are being managed centrally in an optimized manner. And the cloud provider itself, they build performance optimized hardwares, and they have their own cooling system. And since the cloud providers, they take care of the security of your data, so they will be having different data centers across different locations. They will also be taking care of the security aspect, because they have to be in business, and if they leak out the security, the privacy things which are private to the users, they will just run out of the business. Then they had to also take care of the legal policies and issues. So very much all the burden is offloaded to cloud, and of course it will then lead to a lot of optimal utilization of resources, reduced power, and large scale optimization of all the resources can be done. So the achievements of cloud computing, or in case of optimal resource utilization, can be seen from two perspectives. One is the reduced resource utilization and reduced power consumption. So from this we can see from these figures we can see how cloud is beneficial to business according to a survey which was conducted by Edge Strategies. According to them, 54% people say that if you will go for cloud, you will save on more money. 47 people say that it will be more productive. Then 40% say that their business will be more flexible. And 33 people say that if you go for cloud, your business will be more innovative, because all your burden, all the risks, all the investments, everything has been offloaded to cloud. So what are the benefits of cloud computing from the end user perspective? Those were from the business perspective. From the end user perspective, there will be reduced local computing power, because if you are going for traditional approach, you need to buy your own personal computer, then you need to buy your own processors, your own servers to cater to a particular demand. You need to have a large memory to meet your storage requirements. Then you had to install, you had to meet all the software requirements also on your own. So there will be a lot of resources which would be involved, and a lot of computing which will be involved. So if you're going for cloud-based approach, your computing requirements will be reduced. What you can do is you can utilize the computing from a remote server, which is being provided to you as a service via the cloud service provider. And one needs only basic computing power to connect to the internet, because how you're connecting to cloud services, you are just connecting to them via internet. So all you need is, you just need an internet connection, and you need a thin client to connect to this interconnection, and then you enter the world of unlimited services, unlimited power, unlimited computing, which is provided to you by cloud computing. So these are some of the achievements which cloud computing achieves in terms of local power. It reduces the hardware requirements, it reduces the software requirements, and it increases the portability, because traditional approaches, they were very hard to be portable across different platforms. But if you're going for cloud-based approaches, they are usually portable across different platforms, because you can use any device to access your services. So it promotes portability of the services and the power. Then another thing is, benefit of cloud computing from the end user perspective is the local storage power is reduced, because if you went for a traditional service, the user programs and the data files are stored in the local device, and you have to perform all the backups, all the checks, checkpointing thing, everything had to be done periodically by yourself, and so that if there is any hardware damage, it does not hamper your business. So the drawbacks of this thing is, if you are storing everything on your local system, what can happen is sometimes there can be a massive hardware failure. So what you are left with is nothing. All your data, it can get lost if you do not have a backup plan for it. Then it will involve a lot of storage space which can run out any day, because these days we are dealing with big data coming from different sources like Facebook, then we have Twitter, then we have Instagram. All these sources, they are having massive amount of data. And even if you're in health business, even in that case, the data is growing at an astounding volume, at an astounding speed. So you can easily run out of storage space if you are opting for a traditional approach where you store everything locally. But if you're going for a cloud-based approach, you can just offload your data to a third party, and your cloud service provider will make sure of the availability of data at all times. What the service providers do is they can just keep multiple copies, they can replicate your data across different geographical locations in different data centers. So if there is any hardware failure, say if a data center in America goes down, it can easily access the data from another data center, perhaps in Japan. So these are some of the achievements which cloud computing achieves over the traditional systems in terms of storage space, in terms of data consistency, and in terms of availability. Another benefit to the cloud end users is the variety of end devices it promotes. So in case of traditional computing resources, one can connect to the internet by a personal computer, or maybe if you go for a modern scenario, you can connect to the internet by your PDA device, etc. But the drawback is the computing power. It is not portable. If you are just going with a thin client system, like if you're just going around with your tablet, you can't ensure that you will be meeting all your computing requirements at all point of time with just a tablet if you're going for a traditional approach. But if you have a cloud-based approach, what you can do is you can just log into your services and just access these services and have unlimited computing power at your disposal anytime, anywhere. So this variety of end devices which are being provided to you is also one of the benefits which cloud computing achieves, and it provides your small devices with intelligence, because you are computing or you are shifting the computing of the jobs to cloud. And what you need to do is you just offload your processing to the cloud, and what you are left with is just the resources which you are using. So as we have already discussed about the energy aspect of cloud computing, so there was a survey which was conducted, and according to this survey, if you are moving your services to cloud, you are going to save on to almost 87% of your IT energy. So this survey, it says by moving 86 million US office workers to cloud, you will be consuming 87% less energy. So imagine a world if everyone is using cloud services and everyone is saving on to as much as 87% of resources, then just imagine how much energy we would be able to save upon. So this was it with the benefits of cloud computing. Now we will be moving on to the different service models which cloud computing offers. Let's look at a simple analogy. When you move to a new city and you're looking for a place to live, so what are your options if you move to a new city and you are going to live there for, say, a few months, few years, or for your lifetime? What are the options you are available with? You can either build a new house, you can buy an empty house, or you can live in a hotel. So what are you going to opt for? It depends upon your requirement. So if you want certain specialized kind of things, that such and such things, such and such hardware should be there, you will go for building up a new house altogether. And if you are like, okay, I just need these things, then I will just go and buy a new house and just move in. And if I have another special kind of requirement, maybe my requirement will be like, I'm just going to stay in the city for, say, a few weeks, and what I need is I need this kind of spa service, I need this kind of food, this kind of lodging, then the best option available for me is to just go and stay in a hotel. So let's see how these things you can translate to cloud computing. So if you want to have your own IT department, what it is it similar to buying a new house? If it is similar to buying a new house, you can rent some virtualized infrastructure and build your own IT system among those resources which may be fully controlled. Technically speaking, you'll be using infrastructure as a service solution. So if you need to build a new house, you can just rent out on some of the virtualized infrastructure which is being provided to you by the IT department, or which is being provided to you by the service providers. And this kind of infrastructure, these kind of hardware requirements, all these kind of things are called as infrastructure as a service. In case you want to have a requirement similar to an empty house, that you do not have very specialized needs, like everything should be of a particular kind, what all you need is you just need a 2 BHK house. If you have this kind of IT requirement, then what you can do is you can directly develop your IT system through one of the cloud platforms. So if you have you just go and opt for a particular cloud platform, and on top of this platform you can build up your cloud services. So this kind of platform is called as platform as a service, where you are utilizing the IT platform. You're just utilizing someone else's platform and going about with your business. that is platform as a service. But if you do not have these kind of special needs, all you need is just a place to live in. In this kind of case, you need to develop you just need to develop your IT industry based on some software. You just have requirement for some kind of particular software, that I'll be needing this kind of software. Say I will be needing Photoshop, I will be needing a basic Java platform, a particular software. Then you can just go for something like called as software as a service. What these are, we'll be seeing into detail now. So these are the major type of cloud services which are available. Can be software as a service, where you can rent out a computing software for your resources, just like renting out a hotel room. Then you can use platform as a service, which is similar to living in a new pre-built house, where you have a platform and you just start off your you just start off with your business needs. And of course, if you want something like you want everything from scratch, that this should be the brick and the mortar should be like this kind of cement should be used, and every specific thing, then you need to build your company from scratch. You need to invest right from the infrastructure. Then you can opt for infrastructure as a service. So if you are opting for software as a service, the devices through which you can access these services is either you can access it through mobile devices, or you can access it through any kind of web-based application. So the applications can comprise of any kind of general application, any kind of business-based application. For example, if you are using a healthcare software, perhaps you can use your software, which can be in turn hosted by one of these service providers, like Amazon EC2 might be hosting a particular kind of healthcare system, a healthcare software, which would be used by people in say hospitals. Then if you are going for platform as a service, you will be using the development tools. You will be using the you will be using their runtime environment. You will be using their control interface. So these are the things you will be using, and what you will be taking care of here is the resource management, dynamic provisioning, fault tolerance, load balancing. All these things will be involved in this case. And then if you are going to rent out on the infrastructure and you're opting for a service model like infrastructure as a service, then this model will comprise of resource management interface. Then it will also comprise of system monitoring interface, and then other technologies which are involved in this case are virtualization. Virtualization is a kind of backbone of cloud computing, because virtualization, it makes cloud computing a reality. Then you can go for computing requirements, then you can go for storage, then you can go for network, and many other things. Whatever are your infrastructure requirement, you can just opt for that kind of model of cloud computing. So in case of infrastructure as a service, what does infrastructure as a service does? It provides a capability to the consumers to provision processing, storage, network, and other fundamental computing resources, where the consumer is able to deploy and run arbitrary software, which can include operating systems and applications. So what is happening here is the consumer is being provisioned with software, networks, and other kind of resources. And the consumers, they do not have to manage or control any of the infrastructure, and there might be some control over operating system. So in case you're opting for a cloud, say Amazon EC2, what Amazon EC2 does is it provides you virtual images in terms of something called as Amazon machine image. So in case you're going for Amazon machine image, which is an infrastructure, which Amazon is providing you, then you can have a control over the flavor of the operating system you want. So if you want to install Ubuntu on your Amazon machine image, then you can very well go ahead and install it. Then another infrastructure as a service providers are Eucalyptus. Then Eucalyptus is open source, and then we have Open Nebula. So what infrastructure as a service does is it has a resource management interface and it has a system monitoring interface, and below this it has a virtualization layer. What virtualization layer does is it provides computing system, network, storage, all the infrastructure in a virtualized manner to the end user. So we just talked about Amazon machine image. Amazon machine image is nothing but it is a virtual image which has been formed by the underlying architecture, by the underlying resources of the cloud service provider. Next kind of service model is infrastructure as a service. And infrastructure as a service, it provides support for virtualization techniques in terms of manageability and interoperability, availability and reliability, and scalability and elasticity. So these are the benefits of infrastructure as a service. Then the next is platform as a service. So we'll be covering a platform as a service and software as a service. What these models are in detail in the upcoming lecture. I hope you had, by the end of this lecture, you had some idea about what cloud computing is, what are its benefits, and you had a look and feel of what are the service models which are available, and we had discussed infrastructure as a service in detail. So we'll continue with this in the upcoming lecture. Thank you.
With this note, thank you, ma'am. Thank you so very much for giving us this productive session. And friends, believe that you have discovered and tried to understand more and more about cloud computing through the sessions we have conducted for you. So if you have any queries or feedback, then do write to us at info.cec@nic.in. With this note, we are taking your leave, that we will be meeting very soon and would be discussing more. Till then, take care. Goodbye. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you once again.